right, good morning. Good morning. This virtual public hearing conducted by the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Maritime Transportation, Power and Energy Utilities, and Emergency Response is now called to order at 9:02 a.m. Notice of the hearing was disseminated to all local media outlets on November 3rd of 2020, with the second notice provided on November 8th of 2020. Notice of the hearing was also made known on the Guam Legislature's website. This morning, the committee will hear testimony on Bill number 299-35 COR, an act to add section 34102.1 and 34116H to amend section 34102, 34116F and G, all of Article 1, Chapter 34, Title 10, Guam Code Annotated, and to amend section 3106E and F, 3121C and 3122A, all of Article 1, Chapter 3, Title 9, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations relative to updating fees, impoundment, licensure requirements, and mandating microchips for licensed pets that I introduced. The measure was co-sponsored by Speaker Tina Munia Barnes, Senators Jose Pito Terlahi, Regine Bisco-Lee, Joe S. San Augustine, Amanda L. Shelton, Tello Taitagui, and William M. Castro. Upon conclusion of discussing Bill 299, we'll take a 5-minute recess before we hear testimony on Bill number 417-35 COR, the Aktun Manhitzids and Manafa Mamaulik, an act to add a new Article 5 to Chapter 50, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated relative to establishing the Guam Intra-Regional Commerce Commission, introduced by Senator Kelly Marsh Taitino, Speaker Munia Barnes, Senators William M. Castro, and Joe S. San Augustine. Before we proceed with the hearing testimonies, I'd like to provide the panel of participants with some general rules of conduct for this virtual public hearing. All participants must abide by rules of conduct and quality assurance standards, including the chair will invite individuals who have signed up to testify. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking and shall state their name, title, and organization for record purposes. Please ensure that you are unmuted and that you are speaking clearly into your microphone. For group settings where more than one individual is present, please state your name before providing comment. From among the panel of senators, each member will be allowed to pose one question to an individual testifying for one round and be provided another round if necessary. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this rule of conduct will result in removal from the meeting room by the host. I'd like to first begin by welcoming my colleagues who are joining us today. Senator Kelly Marsh Taitino, Senator Will Castro, and Senator Tello Taitagui. Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll now proceed with discussions on Bill 299-35 COR, beginning with my opening statement on the measure. Bill 299-35 COR is a bill seeking to assist the Department of Agriculture in its role in regulating the pet and stray animal population. This bill was worked on in partnership with the Department of Agriculture to address several of their concerns with their limitations when enforcing the current pet licensure law. This bill addresses the stray dog population in multiple ways. It encourages veterinarians to be a part of the solution by requiring them to report all unlicensed pets that they treat. It discourages the import of non-sterilized pets by adding a fee to keep these animals intact. With less intact pets coming into Guam, we prevent these pets from mating and increasing the stray pet population if they are lost or abandoned. Lastly, it mandates microchipping so that all pets can be found in a database by animal control officers, easing the return of any lost pet to its owner. The bill also does not restrict the department's current authorities under law. One example is their authority to humanely euthanize or confine any animal that's determined dangerous. The bill also maintains laws like the leash law and the law that all unlicensed pets be impounded. This encourages pet owners to register and ensure that their pets are not running at large. Getting all pets registered, licensed, and microchipped will be the first step for ridding our island of the stray pet population. The Department of Agriculture is anticipating a catch, spay, and release program to address the stray pet population, and registering pets ensures that the family pet is not caught up in the sweep. The stray pet population has been a long-standing issue affecting the people of Guam. Some people are unable to walk in their own neighborhoods because of these stray animals. Kids walking from home to the school bus are in danger of being chased and attacked by strays. This bill offers a multifaceted solution to ensure that everyone from the Department of Agriculture to pet owners and veterinarians are all a part of the solution to reduce the stray animal population and keep our community safe. With that, I will begin by calling those who have testified in order as their name appears on the sign-in sheet. Up first will be Ms. Chelsea Munia Brecht, Director of the Department of Agriculture. Chelsea, please make sure your microphone is unmuted.
Hi, good morning, Senator. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm moving around my speech, or testimony, as it were. Okay, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for this legislation to help the department. At the start of this year, we had 4 animal control officers with funding to hire 3 more entry-level ACO positions, ACO being animal control officers. Our biggest mission was to enforce current laws and work with partners to reduce the stray dog population. Bill 299 would provide gasps of air for a section struggling to survive, even before the pandemic crisis. With 4 animal control officer, 1 personnel, 1 clerk 1, and the territorial veterinarian, we barely had enough operations or supply funds to cover minor vehicle repairs, registrations for our vehicles, and gas. Serving our community the way we wanted to was a foregone fantasy. And that was when we had Tourism Attraction Fund funding. For fiscal year 20, it was $405,800 or $405,801. Sorry, early morning. Last year, that was for last year. That was reduced $26,000 from the year before. And now with the fiscal year adjustment, we have a nearly 70% reduction in our primary funding source for animal control officers. What we have is just enough to keep 3 ACOs. We went from $405,000 to $140,000. And the registration fee would provide an increase in funding for our ACOs, but we're not asking for more than we need. We're trying to secure enough just to begin doing our jobs without one hand tied behind our backs. We tried our best to find an impactful solution that was sensible and fair. 3 officers in the field, 1 in the office to provide administrative support. The office needs to complete entry permits for families bringing in pets and farm livestock, but also along with our clerk answering animal control complaints and relaying information back and forth between ACOs and the community. In this everyday battle to take on that mission, one of the bigger challenges ACOs have that takes up a needless amount of time is determining ownership, dealing with multiple constituents, some asserting ownership and some denying ownership. And the mayors can understand and attest to what we're saying. You frequently encounter one resident complaining about the pets of another resident, and then when animal control officers show up to address the situation, there's a back and forth about who the pet actually belongs to and whether it is a pet or not. The intent in subsection 34102.1 is to work with veterinary offices to ensure all pets are registered and licensed. We can work with veterinarians to tweak the language in this section a little bit, as I understand that maybe some of them may have concerns with that. We would like veterinary clinics to notify the department in special cases where it may prove difficult for whatever reason for owners to register their pets. Subsection 34116 applies to animals adopted through GAIN. And I'm sure that this would not be too much of an issue. Having that ongoing communication relationship with GAIN where pets adopted would automatically be registered. Subsection 34116 is the non-sterilization option for importers at a $120 fee. This applies to people moving to Guam who choose not to sterilize their pet. This choice increases the risk of pets intermingling with the stray and increasing the stray population therein. How many stories do we hear of family pets sensing a dog nearby that is in heat and the pet escapes the family property and is found mating with the dog in heat? I think we all have heard too many of these stories. This fee is meant to serve as a deterrent to that situation. However, there is an exemption for local breeders. If the importers are breeders who are operating lawfully and in good standing with the regulatory agencies, the fee is waived. Breeders may also microchip their own dogs. Lastly, subsection 3106 is the fee. A fee of $5 was implemented in 1998, 22 years ago, when the minimum wage was $5.15. The Rabies Prevention Fund was established that same year, and the entry permit fee was set at $60. 743 entries in fiscal year 21, down from 791 in fiscal year 20, and there's been a general downward trend in the number of pets imported. The amount budgeted to the department this fiscal year is $44,610 from the Rabies Prevention Fund. Every year, these funds go to support repairs to animal control vehicles, gas, the barest of basic supplies, and to assist GAIN with utilities, which include power, water, telephone, and repairs to water breaks or water pipes that burst and leak. In some months, power and water for our agency and GAIN can easily total more than $8,000 a month. And these are recurring each year, so it's easy to conclude how that $44,000 provides the minimalist of support to our animal control officers. But we have been working to change this. Our agency has been moving forward to enforce all mandates in every section, and we are starting with what we know and what we're supposed to be doing. Registering and licensing is the very basic for animal control. Then we can move towards leash laws. But years of funding shortfalls have made enforcement of these very basic regulations far-fetched. How do you regulate pet registration if you cannot even provide the very basic pet tags? This registration fee increase would enable animal control to start at the very beginning and provide tools to enforce. Increasing this fee could bring a potential of $114,400. This could translate into one clerk typist 3 and one animal control officer 2, and new supplies, new dog traps, new snare poles, and coupons to veterinary clinics to pay for dog tags when you register your pet. This means instead of 3 entry-level animal control officers in the field and 1 working in the office with a clerk, our community could have 2 clerks in the office processing animal import permits and health certificates and pet registrations, animal complaints, and providing customer service, while our villages would get 1 animal control supervisor and 5 animal control officers in the streets. This is the plan we laid out at the beginning of my term with the agency, and so far we've been on track. If you recall, in August 2019, we were encouraging the public to register their pets before we begin an anticipated roundup. We applied for DOI grant funding to implement a stray animal roundup, sterilization, and in aggressive cases, euthanization. We were collecting registrations up to the day the island was shut down in March. Now with cuts to our Tourism Attraction Fund budget, we lost funding we were using to hire more personnel. And with COVID, we didn't want to continue increasing face-to-face interactions with the registration, and we did not want to add a burden to our community of pet owners. We understand that this is a hard time for everyone. Our plan was and still is to coordinate the roundup and sterilization with pet registration and microchipping. These would all work in tandem together, not to track animals, but to be able to quickly determine ownership or lack thereof during daily operations. Registering with the Department of Agriculture strengthens enforcement capacities during responding to complaints or calls. Animals that are not microchipped will be sent to GAIN for adoption, or the animal will be euthanized if they're determined to be aggressive. In 2019, roughly 5,720 cats and dogs were serviced by local veterinary clinics. These are the people we can presume are likely to register their pets. With a $15 increase to this section budget, funds collected would support the $114,000 in new personnel and supplies. The Tourism Attraction Fund in fiscal year appropriated $140,000, cut substantially from our $405,000 in fiscal year 20. The fiscal year 20 budget was covering 9 positions, including an additional agricultural management technician and biosecurity. But with the current fiscal year 21 funding, we're barely keeping the 3 existing personnel we have, which are 2 animal control officers and 1 clerk. The increase to the registration fee will help sustain an increase in the number of animal control officers from 2 to possibly 5 animal control officer 1s. And if we are able to retain the funds to fill 3 positions that are currently vacant. We're not trying to make life harder or more expensive for people, but we are trying to hold ourselves more responsible for enforcing laws that already exist and are designed to create the community that we want. Safe for our pets, safe for our families, safe to walk or be outside. I'm sure we can address or delay collection of the registration fee until life gets a little more stable. Or we can have those who can afford it register their pets, and for those who can't, they just need to keep their pets behind a fence or on a leash. We understand that there are those who think this is unkind, but it is also unkind to have pets running around in the streets, causing damage to neighbors' yards, or chasing other residents' pets or children. And I'm sure we are more than happy to work with everyone who has an interest or an opinion or concern about this to find a resolution that we can all work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea, for your testimony. Up next is on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Cyrus Lure of Guam Animals in Need. Cyrus, please unmute and begin your testimony. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could we get the
Sure.
testimony, please, of Department of Agriculture on our chat, please? Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem. Mr. Lure, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman, for this opportunity to provide testimony. My name is Cyrus Lure. I'm the president of the Board of Directors of Guam Animals in Need, and I'm providing my testimony today in my capacity as that, in that role. We at GAIN, we're supportive of Bill 299-35, and we would like to thank the author and all co-sponsors for supporting this bill. I think that there are some concerns that can be addressed that I'm sure we're going to need to finesse with the many different stakeholders that we have on island. But I think ultimately we can all agree that government needs to take stronger steps toward addressing the stray animal problem, and I think this is a very, very positive step in the right direction. In regards to the bill itself, in Section 2, there is language in there that says the pet identifier microchip needs to be implanted by a licensed veterinarian. And at GAIN, we don't have licensed veterinarians, but we do have staff that have been trained to insert microchips. And so we think maybe that language could be adjusted. We understand we don't want to allow just anybody to insert the microchips, but maybe it could be as authorized or under the oversight of a veterinarian or by a local nonprofit authorized by the director, or some language that's sort of along those lines. But it's a procedure that can be done safely as long as it's done by somebody that's trained and doesn't necessarily need to take up the time of a licensed veterinarian who might be doing more substantive or critical work at the time. The veterinarian hospital penalty, GAIN doesn't really have a stake in that. I imagine that there might be some pushback in regards to that. And I can see edge cases in which you don't want to necessarily discourage members of the public from bringing their pets in, because even if the law may allow for people to bring in their pets and not necessarily need to worry up front about the care or the possible penalties, we've noticed that sometimes misinformation can spread real quickly. And if people start thinking that if I take my animal in, I will be penalized, or the vet will be penalized $500, et cetera, that might be something that we need to educate the public. However, this language is changed in the future. So I would just emphasize the need for if any changes are made, and I imagine some might be made, that there needs to be a concerted effort to make sure that the exact language is really explained to people. And so that's why additionally we might recommend maybe some sort of a phase-in period if there is strong opposition to any element of this, maybe just a 6-month or 3-month phase-in period before enactment. Nothing too drastic, but just an opportunity for people to begin licensing their pets, which I know that the Department of Ag has already done, but of course with the pandemic, things have kind of hit a obstacle there. In Section 5, this is at the top of page 4, there is some language regarding the intact pet entry fee. I absolutely see the intent here. And again, as GAIN, we're the animal shelter, so we don't really have a strong, we don't have a stake in this. I'm sure the breeders would have a stronger, may have some stronger concerns here. Personally, I think it's a good idea, although I would want to see perhaps an exemption for people who are Guam residents who have therapy dogs or some other type of cases like that. They wouldn't technically be a breeder, but I'm imagining an edge case in which an animal might not be sterilized and be a service animal of some sort. It's unlikely, but we do know that there are people with service animals who regularly go to the PI for medical care. And if one of them happens to be not sterilized, maybe even for medical reasons, we wouldn't want them to necessarily have to pay that $120 every single time they return to Guam. So that's a minor edge case that I think could be addressed pretty quickly. I like the idea of updating our fee schedule. It hasn't been updated in a number of years. Of course, that's something that you know, the penalty as it is right now is kind of a joke, to be very honest. And so something a little bit more realistic, I think, is effective. Personally, I always like the idea of having some sort of language that other states have, which automatically adjusts penalties every 5 years in line with inflation. I know that hasn't been done in Guam. It's an idea that if anybody wants to, if the committee would like to include, I like that, because you wouldn't have to go through the GAR process every 5 years or however long to update the law, update the fees, but it could simply automatically be adjusted every 5 years. So it wouldn't be anything drastic. You'd simply say that the fee schedule needs to be adjusted in line with inflation automatically every 5 years. If that is something that is allowable, I know it hasn't been tested or challenged in Guam, but it's something that could kind of keep the fee schedule in line with whatever the current impact is. And so it wouldn't be raised more or less, simply in line with inflation. The last two questions, or not questions, but in section 7, there's language about providing or reaching out to the owner digitally via notice on the department website or email. I know the folks at the Department of Ag, and they are excellent in terms of going the extra mile to reach out to folks, especially in cases of stray dogs and confiscating animals. I would simply say maybe put email there and then something along the lines, or if unavailable, then notice on the department website, or maybe and notice on the department website in all cases, so that in the future, 10, 15 years from now, somebody can't confiscate an animal, know who the owner is, but simply post it on the department website and not reach out by email, phone, mail, and in person. So we just want to make sure that every reasonable attempt is made to contact the owner if the owner is known. I believe that kind of covers all of our concerns. Just to clarify, when it comes to section 8, the language for allowing the sterilization and release as part of the department sanctioned catch and release program, we are interpreting this language as moving forward authorizing CNR programs or TNR programs, which are catch, neuter, release, CNR or trap, neuter, release, TNR. This is something that has been a concern when we've reached out to the mayors and discussed spay neuter programs. They have a legitimate concern. What happens if an animal that is released to the public by the government then bites a kid? And where's the liability there? Where's the safety there? And we want to. It's definitely an area that needs to be continued to develop with the mayors and with the public. But the way that we read this language is that it is finally authorizing that to be done, because it's been a gray area to date. It hasn't been really clarified in language what happens if the government releases an animal. Is that legal? And so we're interpreting this as legalizing that. We think that's a good idea. It doesn't create a rampant sort of gain opens up the gates and lets animals loose. But a TNR program or CNR program has to be, we would say, has to be authorized, sanctioned by the department, and has to be done in accordance with whatever sanctions or rules that they implement. And to be very clear, the reason why TNR and TNR programs are important is that studies have shown you cannot kill your way out of a stray animal problem. If we went out there and began just killing dogs left and right, it actually increases the population. Because what happens here is you're taking the large dogs that consume the resources in an area, you're killing them off, the strays, and that vacuum, a vacuum is created in an area that resources still exist. There's still people that feed dogs, there's still water in areas, there's still chickens or whatever that they would eat. So you're not reducing the population, you're simply creating a vacuum, and that vacuum is suddenly filled with 3, 4, 5 puppies, and they're now competing in that area. And so studies have consistently shown that when you try to kill your way out of a problem, you see an increase in the stray animal population. The only way that you can actually demonstrably solve a stray animal problem is through widespread, consistent spaying and neutering. And so this legislation, we view this as a tool towards that, because you can't really have a robust spay and neuter program without knowing who owns the animals and who doesn't, and who you're supposed to be talking to. And so we just want to make it clear that we are definitely supportive of all efforts that do widespread spaying and neutering, as long as they're done safely and in accordance with the law. And we're overall very supportive of this bill. All the little nuances that I've listed to date are not reasons for us to oppose the bill. We just think these are tiny little, very quick edits that can be made. But overall, we're very supportive of the legislation, and we thank all the senators for co-authoring this, the Department of Agriculture for taking the lead on this, and the committee for hearing it today. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Luer, for your testimony. Next on the sign-in sheet is let's see, Dr. Joel Joseph, Pacific Island Veterinary Services.
Today, thank you for giving me this time. Thank you, senators, for your interest in this topic, etc. I would like to clarify, I'm from Wise Owl Animal Hospital. The Pacific Island Veterinary Services is the business that we do in FSM, RMI, and Palau YAP. So just a little thing on that. I believe that microchipping is your answer to registration and licensing. Get everybody microchipped. It's not that big of an expense. When we're talking about expense, I'm talking about $50 is what we charge for implant and everything, including registration. We have special days where it's only $25. If you own a dog, you should be able to afford that. I also believe that people should be allowed to microchip their own dogs. It is standard, it is routine, it is done everywhere. But what you really want to do is have them register it. Putting the microchip in is useless if they don't register it. We have numerous pets that are microchipped and there is no registration. They come from pounds, they come from the public, they come from everywhere. It's not done completely. You do need the verification. And my suggestion would be that people can microchip all they want. Department of Agriculture can sell microchips, make a profit that way. And they can charge a fee to make sure that they are registered. I would suggest that veterinarians and people authorized by Department of Agriculture be allowed to do that. I will disagree with Cyrus in that I think the people at Gain should be allowed to do it on their own. I think Gain should set an example. They will have it verified too. Lead by example. Everybody gets it verified. And the verification should be stressed around actually being registered online. I don't believe that Gov Guam needs to have their own licensure. The registration for the microchip is already done. It's international. It's easily accessible on the internet. Hawaii just recently went to a program where they've stopped licensing like that and collecting license fees. It's ridiculous at this point in time. The work has already been done. You put in the microchip, you register it online, you have your registration there. If you want to charge a fee for verifying it, I guess that's where you can get some of your money. Okay. In my written testimony, I've included a thing from the Hawaii Veterinary Medical Association indicating that they are doing that change there. Okay. I think that resources of Department of Agriculture can very much be spent in a much more productive manner than dealing with all the licensing issues. They don't need to buy the software. They don't have to do the training. They don't have to do the maintenance. They don't have to do the IT tech work behind it and maintenance of that and retraining as staff change. It's an expense that just, I don't believe needs to be done. On a different issue, the veterinarians have been asked to verify that licensure or microchipping has been done. I'm actually in agreement with that. However, you cannot ask us as veterinarians to enforce the $500 fee. I'm not holding an animal. It's illegal, possibly, immoral, I think definitely, to hold an animal just because you owe a fine or a fee. I return animals back home. I don't like it, but I do return them back home when people owe me money. I don't believe you can legislate something that will give me the power to do that. This law definitely does not give me the power to hold an animal. On the other hand, I believe GAIN is an agency of Guam in essence. They receive government funding. Let GAIN pick up the animal. Let GAIN collect a $125 fee or whatever for picking up the animal. Let GAIN get a housing fee for the animal and all the other fees associated with microchipping and et cetera. And then your money is applied directly to the organization that is doing a lot of this. Okay. So if you want to enforce it that way, I think that's a wonderful way to do it. Okay. The Rabies Fund in the past. Me and Director Munia Brecht have already talked about this. It's more or less been raided. Sorry for the term. The money was supposed to be very specifically used. It hasn't been. I don't believe the people of Guam are going to believe that the money is going to be used appropriately from this stray dog revolving fund or whatever you want to call it now. I think you'd have to give them a lot of assurance that the money would be properly taken care of. The Rabies Fund has an auditing procedure in it, which has never, not even once, been done. I am not asking to have all that money refunded. Forget it. Let's move on. Let's deal with the future. I do want to discuss the issue about culling, and I'm going to be in complete disagreement with Cyrus. Culling is a great procedure. It is what works. Yes, when you cull and you remove animals from an area, the vacuum is filled by other animals, but not if you continue and you proceed with your culling procedure. This is very well proven by what they've been doing with the pigs. I believe the US government has been doing the pig euthanasia, the pig collections, and it's been very effective. When I did my presentation in Geneva at the WHO, and I talked about our problems here in Guam, to a person, they all asked me why we weren't culling. Okay, and I had no good answer for them. But I will admit that culling alone is not the answer. And I believe the studies that Cyrus is commenting on all went with culling as the only thing that was done. You need a spay-neuter program, you need an education program, and you need culling. And I'll give you an example on why I think that spay-neuter is just not the way to go here. GAIN has said there's 60,000 animals in Guam, strays. Let's just go with a number of 20,000. GAIN says, or there's numbers out there that say animals like this will produce thousands of other animals within a year. Mathematically, that's possible, okay? But if an animal is producing just 2 to 4 pets in a year, you cannot spay enough to do this. Let's say that we were able to spay about 7,000 animals in Guam every year, okay? That would be over 250 animals a week, I believe, or a day. with the new animals coming in, we are still behind the curve. The math just doesn't make it. Okay? Trap and release, you're just simply sending the animals back. You got the same problem. They're still attacking the children. They're still creating an environment where people can't get out of their house. We have promoted in the past, and I am willing to discuss wonderful, scientifically proven methods out in the Turk and Caicos and other islands and other countries that have worked very, very well to control the problem. And this can actually be done with zero expense to Gov Guam. Okay. In addition, there's a big part of the law that I am very much against. We do not need this 6-month issue of when you spay and neuter. Modern literature, and I have 2 pages of references in my submission to the for this bill of references, and there's many more on early spay and neuter, under a year for dogs and under 9 months for cats, where it causes many, many problems. A couple of days ago, I had to euthanize a dog, 3 years old, because it was urinarily incontinent, all due to the fact that it was spayed and neutered, spayed at about 14 weeks of age. The animal doesn't have the estrogen. They got the estrogen pills to have it work, so the animal wasn't incontinent, but it produced so many side effects. You must spay and neuter when animals are hormonally developed. And the literature is coming out more and more and more saying this. Now, as a compromise, if people want to spay and neuter early, let them. I have no problem with that. But what I have a problem with is not giving them informed consent, letting them know that all these dangers can occur. There'd be no way that you would allow any surgery be done on you or your children without knowing what the possible side effects are. These are not minimal side effects. These are very expensive side effects to the owners, and I have a long list of these, and it's only a partial list in the submission that I gave to the board to the regarding this law. And bluntly, I'm cutting my neck by my profits by saying this, because we make a lot of money on these animals that were spayed and neutered early, and there's just no reason that these animals have to suffer, the people have to go through the expense and the heartbreak. Change the age that's in there. Very few animals are reproducing under these ages. These are scientific facts at this point. Now, I'm certain that Gain or other people will produce articles that say the opposite. This item probably won't be actually resolved for another decade. But we do know that there is a large problem created when we spay and neuter at 6 months. I've already indicated in my submission regarding this bill that I'm very willing to compromise at 9 months for dogs and 6 months for cats. I think that's a very reasonable compromise for Guam and our problems here. But we have to take in consideration the health problems and the expense to the owners caused by spay and neuter early. The problems are dramatic. Okay. The other thing I was going to add in is that I think if you really want to do this and you want to introduce this, introduce the leash law, enforce the leash law at the same time. Might as well get 2 stones at the same throw, or however I'm supposed to say that. Okay. I have my submission. I'll also make it available to anybody. Thank you very much for this time on to speak, and I hope that we can come up with a much better bill that will work for everyone, and especially for the animals and the pet owners in Guam.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph, for your testimony. Up next is Dr. Vanessa Oshiro, Mariana's Vet Care. Dr. Oshiro, if you could unmute before you begin your testimony, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, you may proceed. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. I have prepared a letter and I'm just going to go ahead and read that, okay? Good morning, honorable senators and presenters. For the record, my name is Dr. Vanessa Oshiro and I am the owner and operator of Mariana's Vet Care in Barrigada, Guam. I'm here today on this platform to express my concerns regarding Bill 299-35, which, though I believe well-intended, will result in significant unintended consequences. When I returned home to Guam in 2010, after 22 years of professional development stateside, I was largely inspired to do so by the amazing changes I saw in local attitudes toward animal welfare, so different from what I had known as a child growing up on this island. I could never imagine then that as a local veterinarian in this community years later, I would see so many good people show up for their neighborhoods and compassion for the stray dogs and cats that otherwise would be dead in the road, a sight too common when I was young. Truly, to this day, these people are the regular source of my inspiration to continue to practice in an environment extraordinarily challenging for a variety of reasons. Because Good Samaritans are so often responsible for addressing stray animal health issues in their neighborhoods, it is thus my concern that they will be less likely to move on behalf of the animals they see in need if the consequence of Bill 299-35 will be that they are inordinately held accountable for strays in the community they are just trying to help. While I believe licensing and microchipping are critical to animal control in our communities and have supported the Department of Agriculture's recent efforts by offering discounted services toward those ends, I am more in favor of a targeted approach to owner financial accountability by working with the mayor's offices to identify problem animals and/or establish owners not in compliance, even while pursuing an end goal to license all at-large outdoor established pets. Furthermore, that provision of Bill 299-35, specifically requiring veterinarians to hold in their facilities any animals that are not licensed, will also interfere with my ability to practice responsible medicine, since kennel space is very limited when we have a significant number of patients that require in-hospital care. I often prefer to see difficult cases to their end in hospital at no or limited additional expense to the owners, and would rather that than potentially serve as a free boarding facility for government. I reasonably believe that that is my prerogative as a US citizen. Of note, Bill 299-35 defines a very hefty fee for veterinarians' non-compliance, but no language at all for compensation for our services, which would be unnecessary except for the specifications of this bill. In summary, while I support the Department of Agriculture's mission to address the stray animal problem on Guam and have contributed towards its aims as a private citizen, as such, I believe a more equitable approach is to appeal to each case fairly and in light of the particular circumstances and potential impacts on the community. And while I understand that Bill 299-35 intends to provide revenue sources to support Department of Agriculture programs, I believe the approach of Bill 299-35 to do so does not account for the potential strains on local citizens, both financially and spiritually. Indeed, I'm reminded all over again of what I've tried to forget all my life. Thank you. I do want to say that I do support the aim of the Department of Agriculture, and if the attempts to address the budgetary issues are successful, I would want to see them go towards supporting more animal control officers to support their mission. But again, the point has been made, that the funds don't always find themselves where they need to be. So I would like to maybe see if there's anything that can be done to ensure that those monies actually go where they should go. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Oshiro, for your testimony this morning. Next on the sign-in sheet is let me see who's, I apologize. There's some people on the sign-in sheet who aren't here in the hearing, so I'm skipping over anyone I don't see here. Up next is Benjamin Schiff. Mr. Schiff, please unmute before you begin your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here today and listening to me as a pet owner of Guam. Thank you guys for trying to fix the Boonie dog population of Guam. I am in support of fixing the Boonie dog population, as Guam has had this issue since I grew up here. But I'm not in support of some language in the bill. Obviously, that's why we're all here today, to just address some minor changes in language so that it can benefit everybody on our island. I'm just going to try to break it down to 3 basic points today. One, first, reporting of responsible pet owners such as myself, I feel is the first thing the bill is doing, as opposed to actually addressing the Boonie dogs first. Holding and threatening not to release my pet to me if I bring my pet to a veterinary clinic, I believe is wrong, is inhumane and immoral. I also would like to know if the veterinarians do report me to Department of Agriculture for not having something done that's required, what's going to happen with my information when it's reported to Department of Agriculture. Many pet owners of Guam currently are unemployed due to this pandemic, and we are having a hard enough time treating our family, caring for our family. And please don't think that pets are not part of our family, because they are. I believe, as much as this is intended to decrease the Boonie dog population, in fact, it actually may cause more dogs to become Boonie dogs. If you are fearful of bringing in your pet due to not having enough money for treatment and licensing fees and microchip fees and everything, some owners will not bring their pet in and will leave their dogs around Guam, which unfortunately happens more than I like to admit. However, I am in agreement of making larger fees if your dog is lost and found. I believe right now, with the language of this bill, it's taxing and feeing responsible pet owners, when in fact I don't see too much language in the bill of how much an owner would get charged if your dog was caught outside and loose. I would try to fix that. Second point I would like to make is about microchips. I am completely for microchips on all pets, and all of my pets are microchipped. However, I am not in support that veterinarians should be the only ones allowed to administer the microchips. I believe if we are trying to microchip all dogs on island, there should be microchips available, from feed stores to Feathers and Fins, to even if I wish to create a new business selling microchips to pets. There should be nothing stopping me as a Guam citizen of being able to do this. If GAIN or Mayor's Office or Department of Agriculture would like to sell microchips as well, I think the more places that are available, the more owners would actually microchip their dogs. Once again, if Department of Agriculture is willing to sell it or even charge a fee to register it, these are ways that everybody could make money to affect the Boonie dog population. I am in agreement that if we microchip the dog, it is already registered through a national database. So I kind of feel like we're double dipping by having to pay a Guam registration fee if the dog is already microchipped. Also, I'm not in agreement of a $15 late fee. I feel like if you registered your pet, you already did your part in the community, and we shouldn't be taxing them every year with late fees after they already registered the dog. It seems like to me, when they pick up a dog, a Boonie dog, they are going to be looking for the microchips. So if they're going to be using the microchip already to determine if the dog's registered or not, once again, I feel like the department's registration would be taking the resources away from the 2 animal officers I heard that we have currently, and not being progressive. The last thing I wanted to bring up is the funds that are generated, because obviously the reason why the language was written this way was to generate funds to address lack of resources in the Department of Agriculture. I believe Dr. Joseph mentioned the Rabies Fund, and this bill talks about the revolving stray fund. I feel like with this pandemic going on, it's a good time for the department to look internally of how money is misspent. We have a territorial vet getting paid $78,138 every year. I think there's obvious, which is like $38 an hour. I feel like if the territorial vet is getting paid that much, then maybe it's not a good time to tax the responsible pet owners of Guam. I would like there be some language in the bill of how the government is allowed to spend the funds, how they're not allowed to spend the funds. But I'll leave that up to the senators that we elected to make sure that if you do tax the responsible pet owners of Guam to fix the Boonie dog population, there are some restrictions to make sure that our money does go for what it was intended to. The last thing that was upsetting me with the bill was if my dog's for whatever reason caught and found and considered vicious, then my dog will be put down. I know there's supposed to be some way of determining if my dog is vicious. I currently believe, I could be wrong, that there is no form at GAIN. There is no form that shows the procedures of how you determine my dog is vicious. Obviously, my dog is caught, brought to a new facility, not used to anybody. It's scared. It doesn't know anybody. So obviously there's supposed to be a 3-day hold or 3 days before you're allowed to euthanize any animal at a shelter. I just would hope that all of these things would be addressed a little more clearly. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is a couple other countries like Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. It's illegal to remove pets' reproductive organs unless it is medically necessary. They actually only have 1 pound in Sweden for the entire country, and only 7% of animals are actually only spayed and neutered. What they do there is they have high fines, very, very large fines if your dog is caught outside, and actually in some cases jail time if your dog is caught on the road and it's not registered and everything. So once again, I feel like we should focus more on the language of this bill on the dogs that are caught. Once again, if your dog's caught, requiring it to be spayed, neutered, microchip, all that stuff, I think is understandable because your dog was already caught. Yet if your dog's just a normal inside household pet and everything, I don't think we should be attacking those pet owners. Thank you guys all for your time and listening to my oral testimony today, and see you smasi.
Thank you, Mr. Schiff, for your testimony. And that completes the list of people who signed up to testify today. I'll go ahead and open it up to my colleagues to ask questions of anyone who has showed up to testify today, beginning with Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano.
Masi, Mr. Chair, and to everyone who has come here today to provide testimony. All of the research that's been done, all of the real life situations that are experienced, those are really important for being taken into consideration for this bill, to make it stronger, to have a rethink, whatever the author bill of the bill and the Department of Agriculture do with this information. It's been so important to hear all of these perspectives, and I very, very much appreciate that, because like you know, we see that there's something out of balance and just out of hand, and we want to get handle on it. And so to figure out as a community how to do this, that's what we need to be working toward. So there were a few questions, if it's all right, pretty small. I'm just curious, with the cost of a microchip, how much a microchip typically costs and how much it costs to implant it. Perhaps either Dr. Joseph or Dr. Oshiro could weigh in on that so that I understand that part of the implication.
Sure, Dr. Joseph, would you answer?
Okay. First off, you can buy a microchip online for about $10 or less, probably not less with shipping. Microchips are not very expensive. Okay, they're not that difficult to put in. True, somebody can do it with 5 practice attempts on an orange and they will be very good at it, I think. They are not that big of an expense. The problem isn't the insertion. The problem is continually having people register. We've solved that here at Wise Owl by actually registering every chip that we put in right there in the exam room for the people. We had animals from the pound and from the US and et cetera, that the chip has not been re-registered to the new owner. And that is a big problem there. The cost, I just can't, I don't think there's a cost involvement, okay? I leave the floor to you, Dr. Oshiro.
Dr. Oshiro, anything you'd like to add?
Well, I would say it's on average for a microchip that the microchips that we use are microchips that can be registered and updated without extra fees. So our cost is about $25. That's actually, a chip that has an ability for the owners to register easily and change their information at no additional cost. So there's with microchips, there's sometimes fees for the owners. Often there's fees for the owners to update their information in the registry. If they move, if they have a new telephone number, that sort of thing. So every time they actually update their information in the registry, they have to pay for that. So our chip, they don't have to do that. They pay for unlimited changes in their registry, without having to pay additional fees beyond that of the microchip itself. So that cost would be $25 for our hospital, including shipping. So we actually, basically use that as a means to encourage people to register because there's no cost to them beyond the actual chip. So there may be other microchips out there available at lesser fees, but there would be other costs for the owners potentially in registering the chips.
And I appreciate that. I had a feeling that in the big picture, the cost was minimal, really. And I agree also, and I think probably everybody here is of the same mind, but with what Cyrus was saying, and that, this situation has evolved over such a long time, and it's been with us for so long that really, I see the need for a lot of public awareness and buy-in, and for people who've never had to spend $25 on this or go through the inconvenience, if you will, of the extra mile of registering, updating, and these sort of things, I think that buy-in is really important. Because the 60,000 or 20,000, like it didn't happen, it didn't happen without the community being involved in some way. So one of the things I'd like to see with this bill or another bill, if it takes another bill, is creating ease to the process for registering, and maybe they exist. So maybe the the director of the Department of Ag can update me. Is there an online process, especially with the social distancing and the strictures of right now? Is there an online process? Can we register our animals through the veterinarian, since I'm, there already, and do it kind of a 2-for-1? Or can you explain how the process is right now?
Sure, Senator. Thank you for asking. Right now, well, last year, we had people coming in to pick up forms, but we also put the forms online on the DOAG website. And one of the veterinary clinic offices actually asked if they could also download or print the forms and have their customers fill them out right there, and then they could send them in to us for processing. So we have worked with clinics as well as the community by putting it online.
Okay, and then they could just print it out, fill it out, and then mail it in, or do they have to physically come in to process it?
They could also email the document in.
Okay.
Excuse me. And
Yeah, and so,
for the second, sorry, that's okay. For the second cycle of PCOR 1, we actually put up drop boxes outside of the office as well, so that just to limit the interaction. So they have options of emailing it in or dropping off in the physical drop box.
Excellent. And so having that ease, I think, is really important. And then figuring out the ways, for people to actually know this, and again, get that community buy-in. And yeah, it made sense to me as well, which was brought up by others, that given where we're at, to have some sort of timeline for enforcement, to give people 3 to 6 months or something to get their pets registered, to get the microchips to happen, and so forth. And I would just suggest with the author of the bill, it didn't seem to me that the microchip, and maybe I just didn't read it thoroughly enough, but it didn't seem to me that the microchip was consistent throughout. Like it states in the beginning that in order for a pet to be proper, I guess, it needs to be licensed, it needs to be microchipped, but then I didn't see it elsewhere. And so it might need some more consistency, just to make sure that across the board, there's that consistency that is indeed the expectation. So those were my main points. I'll thank you for allowing me to ask those, and then I'll look through my notes to see if there were any more and catch a second round if there's a second round. Sedus Masi, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Taito. Senator Tello-Taitagui.
Sedus Masi, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for being here to participate in this bill. Just a few questions. Well, one, Dr. Oshihiro, if you can, please, if you can send us your testimony. A couple things that you said on there that I totally agree with, and it has to do with the cost to the community during a time like this. And I know that to register your driver's license on Guam for 5 years is $45. Here we are using $20 per year per cat or dog or animal. That's quite a bit of money, especially if a lot of them have 3 or 4 dogs or cats per se. And while we're only spending $45 for 5 years on a driver's license. So I think we need to be very sensitive to our community right now on the cost. Maybe we can gradually expend that up. Oh, go ahead, Chelsea, if you have something to say. You raised your hand.
Yes, sorry, Senator. I believe we were tying it as in the original statute with the rabies vaccination. So it would actually be for 3 years.
Oh, that's
Um,
good to hear. That's
And
good to
then additionally, what we wanted to amend or include that we had spoken with Senator Ridgell about is if a resident spays and neuters their dog as well as inserts the microchip, then we were willing to defray the cost of registering the pet against the cost of spaying their pet and microchipping them.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear.
If I may add, I believe the idea was to defer it, the registration for the first year or two or something to that effect, and then begin charging the registration after that. Is that correct, Chelsea? That's what we discussed, right?
Okay, that's good to hear. Chelsea, is that in your testimony? It's not in your testimony. I kind of like, went down it.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I need to, I can edit the testimony to include that before I officially submit it. Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I hear what Dr. Vanessa was saying earlier. Her and I were on the same boat when it comes to, putting this additional burden on the people. But we also, I truly believe in this bill. I'm a co-sponsor of it and moving forward in the right direction. But, there could be some amendments, quite a bit of amendments, I think, to go over to make sure that it's a sound bill. Cyrus, during the testimony, I think it was in Bill 185 and Bill 285, I think it was on other bills that were brought forth regarding pets. Did they say there was, I think it was mentioned, it was about 100,000 pets on this island they predict? Is that more realistic?
If we're talking about dogs, nobody's done a survey of the cat population, but we presume it's much smaller. The dog population is 60,000. As of 2014, it was a study done by Humane Society International. GAIN participated in doing the field surveys for them. 60,000 dogs on Guam, 24,500 are pure strays. Now, we had a military veterinarian with experience in population projections adjust those for present day. We believe it's increasing about 1% compounded per year. So we believe it's about 30,000 strays now and 68,000 total dogs. And so that number is just continuing to grow. And I apologize, I'm going to be jumping back real quick to Senator Marsh-Titano. Was your question earlier regarding the cost? I should have interjected there that we can, at the shelter, we provide that for $10 right now to anybody in the public. That does include the online registration of putting your name in the database as well. We're able to get better bulk deals because we do thousands per year, plus nonprofits get an additional discount through some of these chip companies.
If you go online, you'll find that it's actually in most states, it's $45. So that's that's nice to hear that the cost for us to do that here is much lower than in the mainland. Because if you look online, it says 45 for these microchips. And I have no problem of owners doing it. I mean, if anybody's going to be more gentle and careful of your pets, it's yourself, So, and even in the States too, they allow the owners to insert the microchip inside, and it's supposed to be really easy, like Dr. Joseph mentioned. Practice on a couple oranges at least 5 times, and you'll be a pro at it. So. Yeah, that cost. So you're looking, Cyrus, when you were doing those numbers, I was trying to add it up. So you would say about 98,000?
No, I'm sorry. That's a total amount. And so the total amount as of today, we estimate is 30,000 strays, 68,000 total dogs. So
68,000 total dogs and cats, you would estimate, right?
Oh, sorry. 68,000 total dogs on Guam. Of that 68,000, 30,000 are stray.
Okay, got it. Okay, so less than 30. Chelsea gave us a number, earlier on how many, I think it was 5,000, right, Chelsea? Estimating 5,720 cats.
Those were cats and dogs that were treated by veterinary clinics.
Right. Okay, so we're looking a little bit more than that. So you're looking at about 38. So it's definitely going to give you a bigger budget than 114,000 to address this. And I'm anticipating that amount because that's such a low amount. Let me see the microchips. Okay, that was done. Mr. Chair, I did 2 questions. You want me to wait for the next round?
Sure, if I can go back to Senator Kelly Marsh Taitino, and then we can go back to you. Senator Taitino, did you have any more questions?
Yes, I did find one nestled in my notes. So I just wanted to ask the Department of Agriculture, and yeah, it's a tough time fiscally, and it's a tough time personnel-wise. We've heard about, you know, having 9 out of a necessary 30 conservation officers. We're down to just a very few in some of our enforcement areas around the island. For the capture, neuter, and release program, is that something you have enough personnel for? Is there the capacity, if that stays as part of the bill, is there the capacity to do this, or is that something that would need to be eased in?
Well, the capacity wouldn't be reliant just on our animal control officers. The plan we had in place involved working with the Mayor's Council so that each of the mayor's offices would dedicate 1 personnel to assist with the Roundup program. And they would be trained by our animal control officers who would schedule the roundups to occur once a day, weekly, in rotating villages. So as an example, every Wednesday they would do the roundup. They'd start off in Santa Rita and post up there one Wednesday with staff, 1 from each of the mayor's council offices. So then we'd have about roughly 25 to 30 people doing the roundup once a week together, rather than making it dependent on just the department to do the roundup or just the mayor's offices. But we'd work together to assist each other. And then it wouldn't increase the cost for personnel too much.
Yeah, and I see Dr. Joseph as well. And yeah, so I'm just trying to put this all together. If we have 30,000 strays and they are doing this, so would they only be capturing up to the amount you have space for and the ability to deal with at a time? For the Department of
process, when we worked through the process and numbers with our animal control officer lead at the time, Gonzalez, they estimated that on a good day they'd be able to round up roughly 25 dogs.
You're sorry to interrupt. Your volume's going down for some reason, and we're having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me better now?
No.
It might be Chelsea,
Background?
could have to do with the earphones. Go ahead, the headphones.
Yeah, it doesn't work well with
Yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah,
better.
we can hear you
We can
now.
hear
There's the
now.
background noise. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry about that. Our animal control officer who recently retired, Vince Salas, when we worked through the numbers of how this program would work, at their best estimate, they concluded that in a weekly roundup with support from mayor's council's offices, we'd be able to get up to maybe 25 dogs on a good day. So it wouldn't be overly burdensome on anybody's resources, really, if we're doing this once a week, capturing roughly 25 dogs in each village or whatever village we're targeting that week.
Okay, and that's good to hear. And then, yes, Dr. Joseph?
25 dogs a week, I think is pretty much what I agree with her that they could handle. But that comes out to about 1,300 dogs a year if you did it 52 weeks. You aren't making a dent. And this would be the vacuum that Cyrus was talking about. You would then be creating a vacuum there. And that's where you're going to be expanding your problem and creating a bigger problem. The math just doesn't add up.
Yes, and Director Brecht?
So I just wanted to point out that during the roundup, what you're also targeting is not just removing the animals up to gain for adoption, but this is where we'd also be working to try and spay or neuter the dogs, and also euthanizing these are feral dogs that we're talking about, not the pets, but if they're encountering the wild feral dogs that are aggressive, then those would also be dogs that are euthanized. So we're trying to do this in conjunction with having people register their pet owner or their pets, and also enforcing the leash law. So we try to do all of this at the same time. So it's a multi-pronged, I hate the term, but it's multi-pronged approach rather than just one approach.
And if I may add to that, I think Dr. Joseph did make a good point. If this is it, then you're setting yourself up for failure. This does have to be part of as the director said, a multi-pronged approach where everything from public education, attitudinal change, to just a robust voucher program, so that people in low income will be able to go to the veterinarian of their choice to get spay neuter. You need 100% or close to enforcement when it comes to imported or adopted animals, and with careful exemptions and such. And but it's not unachievable. HQ high quality, high volume spay neuter vets, HQH VSNs. They are established program. It's an established specialty in the veterinarian medicine field. It's a very, very expensive skill set to hire for, but individuals who are HQH VSNs can do 40 to 50 sterilizations a day. And so, but you have to provide them with the proper space, the properly trained team. It's aspirational, but it is one option of many in a multi-pronged approach that can be tackled by Guam to solve this. And stray animal problems have been solved around the world. You have to use a multi-pronged approach. If an animal is vicious, you obviously don't release them, but you need the rest of the public to spay and neuter their vets. And I think Guam has a unique situation in which we have a lot of these neighborhood-owned pets. The pets that if you come up and ask, well, whose pet is this? People say it's not mine, but if you try to round them up, you're going to get an earful. And so those types of pets need to be targeted. Those would be our top priority when it comes to spay neuter release, where it's a low income neighborhood. They're not going to be able to afford the procedure. It's something that GAIN can get grants for, that we can hopefully get some DOI grants for. There's no single easy solution to all of this, but I think that we need to have our laws as much as possible be able to support the different types of prongs or the different types of opportunities that arrive depending on what sort of federal or nonprofit grants we're able to obtain.
Yes, and it seems to me, I don't know if there's been times where there have been sort of these forums or roundtables or focus groups, because all the information we're hearing today is really valuable. And I just want to throw this out there. I'm not saying that it will help, but it's worth looking at if it hasn't been looked at previously, is throughout our region. I know that we have veterinarians. And so with the programs that I'm familiar with, and I'm not very familiar with them, but there are people coming from the States and maybe they're on grants and maybe they're paying their own way. I don't know that situation, but I do know that, like when I lived in Palau, they have their own national veterinarian. And I'm not sure that he at the time was the only vet there, but there may be something through regional collaboration of, as you were saying, gathering together the veterinarians we have here, getting another maybe 5 or more throughout the region, and having certain clinics, which I know do happen. So, like I said, I don't know if there's any potential there, but there may be something we can work together as a region on that may be able to help each of our areas tackle some of these similar issues that we may be having. But Sejus Maasi, Mr. Chair, for letting me ask another question. I don't know, did anybody have anything to say about the possibility of regionalism? Dr. Joseph?
Dr. Joseph, go ahead.
I do work with the other islands. I am out there. I used to be out there 5 to 8 times a year until COVID. We just don't have enough veterinarians. And I will add that to Guam. We just don't have enough veterinarians. And the reason I don't have enough veterinarians is it takes 6 to 8 months or more to get them licensed. By the time I have them licensed, they've already found another job. As I put in my statement to this, for this bill, provisional licenses for veterinarians for a year is very reasonable. It's done elsewhere. The FDA, the DEA accepts it. And I added that into my statement also. Get us the veterinarians, okay? I have space for 3 more veterinarians. I have the business for 3 more veterinarians, but I can't get them licensed, okay? And we can discuss why at a different forum.
Yes, Situus Maasi for that. And then, Mr. Chair, I don't know, I think maybe a couple people had their hands raised. If you want to let them go ahead and make a statement, like Cyrus and maybe the director.
Or who else was raising their hand?
Cyrus was one, and I think maybe the director.
Okay, go ahead, Cyrus. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going down the whole licensure path, but there's also exemptions for people, for veterinarians doing only sterilization procedures. And so there's an opportunity there to adjust that language if you wanted to do provisional, but maybe if you're concerned about, I don't know, whatever concerns may come up, you could always do it for primarily sterilization procedures. Or you know, multi-steps. That's outside my realm of expertise, and I don't really have a stake in it. But if we're going to go down that route, at the very least, I think it's a very wise thing to allow for veterinarians who are at least or minimally doing sterilization procedures to be able to have that exemption, because right now it's only 10 days that they're allowed to do. And what you're describing is commonly called in other places a spaycation model. And it's something that we're trying to have, establish in Guam, and we did one last year, in fact. That was very successful, where you have anything from veterinarians to veterinarian students go to some place desirable for a trip. Usually this is done in the Caribbean or Central and South America. They stay for a few weeks. They work 3 days in a row, have a couple of days off to hang out at the beach, on off. And it's something that, in fact, a lot of veterinarians and vet students pay to do. They don't even have to, you don't have to pay them or whatnot, but once it's established, such a program is established and it's recognized as being a valid sort of volunteer or training activity, then you actually have veterinarians that are willing to front the cost themselves, because it goes towards their training and whatever requirements they might have in their states, or for students it goes towards their experience. And so that's what we did last year. We had students come out. It was very successful. We had a couple of veterinarians from the states that we just had close connections with. They came out as well to help to work with them. And it's something that we had military vets as well. And it's something that we would like to replicate. But again, you kind of need that seed funding to be able to establish a pilot program and then grow from there. And so again, I'm sharing that information not because it really impacts the legislation before us today, but it highlights the multi-pronged approach that we really need to enable with this legislation.
Thank you, Cyrus. Director Chelsea?
Sorry, I didn't have anything to say on that.
I think that Mr. Schiff raised his hand.
Okay, Mr. Schiff.
I was just going to say, while we're talking about veterinarians and needing all this stuff done and the expenses of it, once again, we have a territorial vet getting paid $80,000 a year. So I don't understand why he can't do half of this stuff when our taxpayer money is already paying him.
Okay, thank you. Senator Kelly Marsh-Taituno, does that complete your question?
Yes, Situus Maasi.
Thank you. Senator Tello-Tadegui?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not really a question. I think in other public hearings we've had on what exactly is agriculture doing to control the dogs and cat populations, and how residents are being held accountable. I think we brought that up in other public hearings. So I appreciate all the hard work, and I just wanted to recognize, the director as well as the deputy director, Adrian Cruz. I know this guy's a very hard worker, and everything that they're doing, especially the program that you guys had, the DOI grant funding that you received for the, I think it was you did say it up here, for the rounding up, sterilization, aggressive, movement that you were doing to help with the stray dogs and cats. I greatly appreciate that work you were doing to getting that funding needed. And I'm asking the Department of Agriculture to please, again, go after this federal funding, maybe in this program that this bill that is the intent of this bill, there may be some funding for that, especially for something like this, or redirect, so continue the good work that you're doing over there with that grant funding finding. Really appreciate it, all your hard work, and thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chelsea and Adrian. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Senator
Just to say,
Tynwyd. Oh, Dr. Oshiro? Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say before I signed out that I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate the Department of Agriculture's continued efforts to address the problems of the stray animals. I feel that everyone their heart is in the right place, and perspective-wise, it may be difficult to see. We all have it from our own view, but I do feel that there is, from the language of the bill, that the intent is there to address the concerns of the community. And I do, believe that that's the place that it all needs to start. And hopefully we can gain some momentum from here in the direction that's going to yield results. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Oshiro. So with that, that will conclude our discussion. I'd just like to add a few things myself as the main sponsor of the bill. Yes, absolutely, that's our intent. Really, we're just really looking for a way to solve the problem we have with stray dogs on the island and problems with regulating pets and all these issues. And of course, I appreciate all the testimony today. And I agree that it's going to take a lot of things. I don't think there's going to be one silver bullet to solve it. I think most problems don't have a silver bullet. It's usually a multi-pronged approach. You have to hit it from many different angles to solve it. So I appreciate all the testimony today. So we're going to take a look at and review all the testimony and go over and see how we can improve the measure and see how we can ultimately find a solution to the stray dog population and just the animal control population, period. The animal control issue, period, on Guam. So with that, that will conclude our discussion on Bill 299. We'll recess for about 5 minutes before we proceed with discussions on Bill number 417. Thank you to everyone on this current panel for participating. You may leave the Zoom room now, and we will recess for 5 minutes so we can allow the next panel of participants to participate in Bill number 417. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. This virtual public hearing will now reconvene after taking a short recess in between bills. We reconvene now for the committee to hear and accept testimony on bill number 417-35 COR, the Aktun Manhita Zen Manafema Maulik, an act to add a new Article 5 to Chapter 50, Title 12, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing the Guam Intra-Regional Commerce Commission, introduced by Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, Speaker Tina Munia Barnes, Senators William M. Castro, and Joe S. San Augustine. I will now give the floor to Senator Marsh Taitano to present her statements on the bill. Senator Kelly, please proceed.
Situus Masi, Mr. Chair, and for having this public hearing, and to those that came to testify or wrote supportive testimony. I didn't get the blue memo for those who came to testify, but next time I will check in with you and see if we can coordinate a little better. But for decades, we have discussed diversifying our economy. This bill does exactly that. Bill 417 to establish an intra-regional commerce commission, also known as Manhita Zen Manafan Maulik, also tackles other issues at hand. And personally, I always like legislation that is a win-win, that it does more than one thing. So it also tackles, as I said, other issues. It has the possibility of lifting up the economies of our entire region, which benefits all of us, not just monetarily, but in numerous ways, from having a more secure place within where we live, a more COVID-19 resistant economies, and a better quality of life for all. It also has the potential of tackling sustainability development and sustainability issues, which is so important in our islands. We have limited space and we have limited abilities with certain things, and we need to be safeguarding our environment and our communities by continuing to move forward in as sustainable a way as possible. It has the potential to look at zero waste issues, at food security, which we've just had that newspaper article yesterday that tells us about some of the food security issues that are out there that we should be concerned about those outside dynamics. Through this COVID-19, we do see a breakdown of some of the food chain nationally and internationally. And we see that other forces are, they are making their claims to some of the food chains that have traditionally helped us on this island. So if we are networking together and growing food or tackling food security amongst our region, that is an important direction for us to be going in. We have the ability through this commission to tackle healthcare issues. Some of what we can look at is within our islands, how they are tackling medical issues, health issues, and Chuk is leading the way towards a medical program that makes medicine more affordable and accessible. And we can work regionally for tourism and so much more. We are blessed to live within a region that is rich in so many ways. It's rich in resources, rich in research. Each island that I have been able to study or go and visit, they are each having multiple types of research happening in their islands, whether it be about clam farms, fish farms, a whole variety of issues that have sustainable and economic ties. Taiwan in our region is an amazing resource for research and development. And we as a region are also rich in skill and talent. In actuality, we are also rich in a history of traditional ties that have allowed us not only to survive, but to thrive for thousands of years. Bill 417 calls for building upon and strengthening those ties. Currently, we get certain amount of our agricultural produce from Rhoda. We get foodstuffs from various other islands in Micronesia, and other islands have very strong industries in weaving and other environmentally kind industries in the region. We have, as examples, Yap Ecoleaf Plate Company in Yap that is helping the region move away from styrofoam and utilize resources that go to waste otherwise. We have the Green Banana Paper Company in Koshrai, and likewise, they are using resources that just become green waste otherwise. And we have so many new industries that are developing. CNMI is working with Hawaii to develop a breadfruit flour export industry. We have kava that has revolutionized economies in the South Pacific, and yet in our region, we have our equivalent of cacao, and they are starting to package it up and export this. We can create new cottage industries across the region. We can create new industries together, some of which is already in the works. And they're very exciting to hear about how we're collaborating, bringing their resources and our resource potential and our skill sets together to create new industries. The Intra-Regional Commerce Commission is to be comprised of the head of the Guam Economic Development Authority, the governor's chief economic advisor, economists or those from like fields from the University of Guam and the Guam Community College, the Port Authority, and community representatives as appointed by the governor and the speaker. And so I wanted to read just some of the tasks that they have. And it's really to serve as a think tank for Guam to research, analyze, and promote mutually beneficial regional economic initiatives, to collect the relevant data on Guam and throughout the region that is needed for informed decision-making regarding regional economic development. And not only to look for the potential, but to identify issues that are barriers and recommend ways to surmount those. So it's meant to be I guess having a multi-approach to these issues. And it's supposed to be helping solve the issues and shepherd us through some of these issues. Another important part of it was to have them not only report to the legislature and the governor, but to come and give oral presentations. We receive actually numerous reports on a monthly or quarterly or annual basis, and they are a wealth of information. But I think it's also important that it goes a step beyond, where it actually meets with policymakers, it actually meets with the governor to make some of their recommendations. So there's that face-to-face interaction, there's the listening on our part, and it's not something that maybe is a very nice report, but just sits on a shelf. So as I mentioned, the foundation for increased commerce potential is there. Our communities are very excited about moving into some of these directions. So let's put some action into lifting up our region and diversifying our economy and develop an inter-regional commerce commission. So just Mr. Chair, for letting me make that opening statement.
Thank you, Senator Kelly Marsh Tyson. I also like to reflect for the record that Senator Will Castro is also participating in this hearing as well. With that, I'd like to go now to the first person on the sign-in sheet to provide testimony today, who is Ms. Melanie Mendiola from the Guam Economic Development Authority.
Hafaday, and thank you. Hafaday, Chairman Ridgell, and members of the Committee on Economic Development, Agriculture, Maritime Transportation, Power and Energy, Utilities, and Emergency Response. And thank you for allowing me, the Guam Economic Development Authority to present testimony in support of Bill 417-35. My name is Melanie Mendiola, and I'm the Administrator and CEO of KEDA. Overall, GITA supports the legislation. The thorough exploration and consideration of regional economic development opportunities can benefit Guam's long-term economic development goals. The formation of a Guam Intra-Regional Commerce Commission can enhance and expand already established efforts to grow opportunities in tourism, agriculture, aquaculture, manufacturing, and other industries. If impaneled, GITA will do its best to provide adequate administrative support to the Commission as mandated by the bill. However, if the Commission, in the course of its duties, desires to be more thoroughly explore specific regional economic opportunities and/or research projects, there may be insufficient financial resources to accommodate these activities, but we'll do our best. Additionally, the enactment of Bill 417 into law will require GITA to commit additional personnel resources to ensure the proper functioning of the Commission. As you know, the ongoing financial challenges COVID-19 presents to the entirety of government of Guam. GITA included will limit our ability to commit new resources to the Commission. As the Commission grows in scope and activity, GITA may need to obtain additional financial support to continually provide necessary administrative services. Thank you again for allowing me to present testimony in favor of Bill 417. GITA sees the potential the Commission has to foster dialogue and eventual action with regards to regional economic development strategies and opportunities. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me or email me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Mendiola. Next on the sign-in sheet is Mr. Rory J. Rispicio, General Manager of the Port Authority of Guam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of your committee. I am Rory Rispicio, General Manager of the Port Authority of Guam. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today in support of Bill number 417 relative to establishing the Guam Intra-Regional Commerce Commission. Mr. Acton Manhihita Zan Manafamalik. Senator Marsh said that better than I did, but I tried. Thank you also to Bill 417-35's main sponsor, Senator Kelly Marsh, and together with his co-sponsor, Speaker Tina Rose Munia Barnes, Senators William Castro and Joe San Agustin, for this forward-thinking piece of legislation, and for including the Port Authority to be a member of this Guam Intra-Regional Commerce Commission. Even in the most difficult of times, as what we have been experiencing these past 8 months, the Port Authority carries out its mission to safely, responsibly, and environmentally manage its assets in order to protect the supply chain, meet the port's employees' needs, and most significantly, to do our part to foster economic growth and job creation. Last year in August, at the Association of Terminal Operators, Stevedoring, and Shipping Companies of Micronesia, the ATUSCM, conference hosted on Guam and by the Port Authority of Guam, Governor Lulian Guerrero Imagahaga delivered the keynote address. In her keynote address, Imagahaga informed the members of ATUSCM of the Leon Guerrero Tenoris administration's commitments to establish closer ties, strengthen cooperation, and agree on initiatives that mutually benefit our entire Micronesian region. Initiatives that have been blessed by the Port Authority of Guam's Board of Directors. These initiatives include establish a tiered fee tied to transshipment volumes of fuel for the petroleum companies and identify and pursue initiatives to develop the fuel capacity at Area A. This may provide initiatives to current and prospective petroleum providers to continue to store transshipment fuel on the island and hopefully pass on savings to our Micronesian neighbors. In connection with this initiative, we will be issuing a request for information to generate interest to lease Area A tank farm and use the area to rehabilitate the existing fuel storage tanks or build new storage tanks. Develop a strategy to implement a small ship cruise industry. A working group comprised of the Governor of Guam representatives was established to develop the plan and collaborate with the Micronesian Cruise Ship Association to work with participating governments and islands within Micronesia to ensure alignment and support with the small ship cruise industry serving on Guam, and Mel Mendiola is the chair of that task force, and GVB and the port are members of that task force. And although the pandemic has placed a pause in the tourism industry, the group has begun to identify all possible risks and opportunities involved in this venture and develop a request proposal, terms of reference outlining the expectations from a viable small ship cruise line industry. We believe establishing a regional cruise industry will have the potential to bolster the region's tourism industry, job growth, and strengthening our local and regional economies. The Port Authority of Guam has been proactively working toward providing a balanced modernization program to address improvements, sustainability projects, and financial self-sufficiency. The infrastructure and service upgrade to our ports will significantly benefit the other islands of the Western Micronesia region. Therefore, Bill 417-35, if passed by Legislature in Guam and approved by Magahaga, is timely and will indeed bridge Guam with our Micronesian neighbors. The result will see the bolstering of our local and regional economies to greatly benefit the people of Guam, as well as our brothers and sisters throughout the other islands of the Western Micronesian region, namely the Federated States of Micronesia, Palau, Marshall Islands, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. In light of the above, we are requesting your favorable passage to Bill 417-35. Situs Masi.
Thank you, Senator Rispicio, General Manager of the Port Authority of Guam, for your testimony. Now I'd like to recognize Mr. Patrick Maloney. If you could please unmute before you begin with your testimony.
Hey, I just have a quick few things to say. One is this is a necessary bill. The region needs to think regionally in a cooperative manner that will develop the neighboring islands as well as Guam economically and assist with so many other additional problems, whether we want to talk about the compact impact or we want to talk about labor, education. The trade will be a huge asset to assisting in those particular areas. The one thing I wanted to ask that the bill have added is in the list of mandatory members, I'm not sure what the correct term is. There's the composition of the members. There's people all from Guam. There is nobody from FSM or the FAS states. To add one member who is directly from there or tightly tied in with the business community there would assist in making sure that this is a two-way committee or commission that's put together instead of just a Guam self-centered commission. By having it two ways, then the advantage will be that no side is left out and the trade and flow of economics can work both ways, which would assist the entire region, including Guam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney, for your testimony. I'd also like to recognize Senator Telotadegui, who is joining us for the second half now. And go ahead and open it up now to my colleagues for any questions they have of the participants, beginning with the bill's primary sponsor, Senator Kelly Marsh-Taitza.
Siduous Masi, Mr. Chair, and if I could read into the record, if that's all right. I received one testimony this morning from the governor's chief advisor, who is also the head of the Guam Visitors Bureau at this time.
Please
so do. It reads, Siduous Masi, it reads, Dear Senator Marsh-Taitano, you have earned my deepest respect and gratitude for your primary authorization and introduction of Bill number 417-35, relative to establishing the Guam Intra-Regional Commerce Commission. In my opinion, this enabling legislation is long overdue, and it demonstrates your fundamental understanding of the priorities of economic interdependence. Through more than 50 years of public service, I have always pushed the envelope for local and regional coalition building. Earning and sharing mutual respect for one another's need through the ceaseless teamwork is the only viable way for our small island governments to break through the tyranny of distance and the inertia of going it alone in order to get timely, worthwhile things done for the peoples of the Western Pacific. The US territory of Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, the Republic of Palau, the Federated States of Micronesia, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and various capitals and municipalities comprising Micronesia, and even parts of East and Southeast Asia thrive ever more vitally the more we and our brothers and sisters cooperate culturally and economically. Now serving in the middle of a pandemic and related recession as President and CEO of Guam Visitors Bureau and Chairman of the Governor's Economic Strategy Council, I eagerly look forward to the day when we are able to actively promote magnificent Micronesia as a COVID-safe tour and travel zone again. Inasmuch as Destination Guam serves as a regional hub and shares countless common economic and cultural similarities and interests with other islands across our shared sphere of commerce, this dynamic tourism concept will soon be worth revitalizing again in the spirit of Guam Intra-Regional Commerce Commission. Even more critically, it will help spur the growth of today's economic imperatives, regional trade and food security, readier access to medical personnel, health, safety, and security, clinics and hospitals, supplies, emergency patient services, telecommunications connectivity, and the pooling of capital resources and intelligence that enhance and protect our Pacific Alliance. For the more we purchase and invest in shareable assets and the more we cooperate for the rapid delivery of regional goods and services, then the more we become interdependent, the more influence we wield politically, and the stronger our buying power across the Pacific becomes. Even at this moment now, my teams and I are actively exploring, adopting, and promoting the technology necessary to help make regionalism and resource sharing as common as the ocean waters and abundant natural life that sustain and unite us. Thank you for introducing this legislation, along with Speaker Tina Rose Munia Barnes and Senators William N. Castro and Joe S. San Agustin. You have my full endorsement. This bill provides a strong framework on which to construct a more deliberate and robust network of trust and development while empowering Guam Economic Development Authority with the magnanimity to become a more engaged and influential leader for the entire region we call home. I feel strongly that a combination of federal grants, low-interest government-backed loans, and economic development banking are worth investigating in the short term. Due to its unique relationship with the United States, each locality in our region will qualify for certain benefits that others do not. But the collective utility of all advantages accruing to our security alliance as a whole should prove every bit as compelling as your creative idea. Sincerely yours, from Carl T.C. Gutierrez, President and CEO, Guam Visitors Bureau, and Chairman of the Governor's Economic Strategy Council. And I do appreciate, and I didn't mention in my opening statement, that it is really true. Throughout the region, everyone has a somewhat unique political status and a set of regional ties themselves, or national and international ties. And these can help strengthen our efforts, is that what we cannot do internationally, perhaps because of our political status, others can bring that to the table. And so this has a lot of potential for us to be thinking together about how we can tackle a multitude of issues tied to our economy in various ways, from directly to indirectly. So thank you for letting me read that into the record. And I sincerely thank my co-sponsors, especially Senator Will, who is here. They each have a deep, deep set of experience and regard for our region. So I very much appreciate Mr. Patrick Maloney for his testimony and seeing the potential. And I agree with him that we have the potential here, the possibility of adding in others to this commission. The authority is there for the commission to add on members as they need, but we could possibly identify someone. We do have honorary consuls here. We do have others. The Pacific Island Bank has some presence. There are others. So since we do have Ms. Mendiola here and Mr. Rispicio, who each have quite a bit of experience regionally over the years, maybe they have some insights to share as to who might be potentials to add into this commission, excuse me, either through legislation or otherwise, if they have some thoughts into who might be an additional member or more.
Senator
so
Kelly,
maybe starting with
actually, Senator Marciano, if we could before, let's just hold off on that question because we do have another participant who's just joined us to provide testimony, and Mr. Matthew Cruz is here.
Oh, great.
And I'd like to allow him the opportunity.
Yes, I will hold off.
And then we'll go back to you to ask the question again to Mr. Rispicio and Ms. Mendiola. But I'd like to allow Mr. Cruz the opportunity now. Mr. Cruz, please unmute before you begin your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Senator Marsh-Titano, for her efforts to form this committee, which is very timely and needed. I've spent much of my time throughout Micronesia with the FAS countries, dealing with finance and business. And I do see the need and an opportunity for Guam to start to actively participate within the talks of improving the economy, improving regional communications and cooperation between the neighboring islands. I must recognize that each island nation has currently their policies to seek food security and to improve their economies. They also have policies and activities which they have continued to do as far as telemedicine, attempts to become hubs for communications, and also hubs for tourism. I can give examples such as Palau with its cruise industry, which has been longstanding. There is currently other programs within the neighboring islands to promote diversification of their economies. I do support this bill, and I recommend that when they do, or if they do form a committee, that they do continually have open talks with these other organizations in the neighboring islands, so that we can have a coordination of what we are doing and what they are doing, and so that there's better cooperation, communication, and we won't be reinventing the wheel, and we will be aware of what everyone is doing so that we can benefit from the lessons they have learned with their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz, for your testimony. Senator Kelly, if you could please ask that question again, if you'd like to Mr. Rispicio and Ms. Mendiola.
Yes, and Sedus Maasi to Matthew Cruz for being able to make it here today. And I had reached out to him early on, and so there were several who helped shape this bill. He was one of them, the Port Authority, Gita, Senator Will. Again, each of these people have a extensive background with our region, and perhaps the longest and most extensive in some ways is Mr. Cruz. And so, you know, everybody had really important insight, and part of that was to make sure that it is benefiting all of us. And he spoke very well and brought forward really important points that there is so much going on in our region. We live in an amazing region, and they are working towards food security. They have their own policies in place, and they have made advances that we can learn from. And so it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel each time. It should be everybody taking their strengths and working together. And hopefully this commission, that would be part of what they suss out, to use a term I picked up in Australia. But if I could ask the CEO of GITA if she sees the possibility of formally adding somebody who represents our region into the commission, or maybe if that's good to keep at a subcommittee, like a working committee level, or who or which office she might recommend, and the same to the Port Authority after Ms. Mendiola.
Yes, thank you, Senator. A couple thoughts that I had was just in many of these economic development initiatives, there is the need for data gathering, and oftentimes there's a disconnect between those who need the data and those who have the data. And so, if by just as an example, imports are that is gathered by I believe it's customs. And then I believe BSP then reports on it. And because of customs funding levels, it's very hard for them to implement something that's automated to gather the information effectively. And so I do think that representation from the Office of the Governor through her Chief Advisor for Economic Development is a very good member to maintain. I wonder if it might be worth considering for in this bill to swap out Guam Community College, a member from the Guam Community College with a member from perhaps DOL or Bureau of Statistics and Plans, specifically for local tracking needs. Because I think if you fill the committee with ideas people and the ideas never translate to the numbers, or if it's hard to translate to the numbers, and if the methodology is inconsistent from year to year to year, how do we track our success if we don't set it up right to start? So I think that it something along those lines, some guidance from somebody or an agency that has access to data, including the ability for the committee to come out and say when an agency has insufficient resources to be able to gather that data.
Seduce Masi for that. Yes, and as we were talking about at the earlier hearing, right, we are finding shortfalls of personnel, and especially this year more than ever, fiscal challenges. And so that is a part of what's important to identify where those are, and how to gain that data, or if that needs to be something that is part of the recommendations and brought forward to policymakers and others. So Seduce Masi for that recommendation, and also for the Port Authority General Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do like Mr. Maloney's suggestion, but I just don't know how that'll work to mandate that statutorily. I like his caution that this commission not be Guam-centric. And so what I'm thinking is you can put into reporting requirements that whatever's to be developed by way of policy must be reported. You have the Micronesian chief executives, you have the Association of Pacific Island Legislatures, you have the Tuscan that I just mentioned. So any inter-regional council that is established and is known, this commission shall report quarterly to them. And then when you have, I believe, 2 senators who are members of APIL, they'll have the mandate to report to APIL what these ideas are to promote this inter-regional ideas. And then you can also ask the governor when she meets with the other chief executives to have this a standard reporting requirement. And then those elected leaders that are elected by the people of Guam will come back to the council and report what their feelings were on what these ideas. And so that way you have that kind of dialogue. I'm not so sure if the legislature and the governor can mandate someone from FSM to sit on locally commissioned, statutorily created body. And just as Matt pointed out, that they're independent nations, they're sovereign. So we have to be very careful how we proceed politically in that geopolitical climate. But if we have a reporting requirement where this commission is required to let all these member entities know, I think you can address Mr. Maloney's concern so that it's not Guam-centric.
Yes, Sidus Masi for that. And all of the recommendations are very important to hear, because we want this to be a commission that makes a difference. And so the reporting through the governor, the reporting through the APIL members, the reporting to these other bodies that are within the region, they provide very good framework for ensuring that the work of the commission, it's inclusive, but also, as I said, getting that information to them and hopefully improving that communication and that collaboration. So Sidus Maasi for that. And if I may ask Mr. Chair, if Mr. Cruz has anything to add to that before you move on to another senator. So Mr. Cruz, did you have anything additional you wanted to add on?
Yes, much of there was a reference as far as tracking down information. If we have a cooperative relationship with these neighboring island governments, they track this information as well. In fact, just having ties and relationships with these governments from a private sector, we're able to obtain the information, imports, exports, trade deficits, everything else that they can achieve without actually going necessarily to our customs and quarantine. It also shows information about their trade between themselves and their trade with other export partners within the globe. So some of the information can be readily available just by purely creating a formal or informal relationship, communications between our island, between the island nations and Guam. And that's what I'm really hoping for. It may be complicated to put somebody on the board who is actually with the governments or with the development organizations from the neighboring islands. But I'm sure if we have a communication set up with the island nations and our neighbors, that we'd be able to share information on a beneficial manner. Thank you.
Sidus Maasi. And so I will re-examine again in the bill with the tasks that we outlined to make sure that, you know, it's very clear that it's important for this commission to have formal and informal relationships and to be having that communication as an ongoing process. So Sidus Maasi for outlining that. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Those are the only questions I had for right now.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano. I'd like to allow now for a co-sponsor of the measure, Senator Will Castro, if you have any comments or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again to the prime sponsor for the opportunity to be a part of this bill that establishes the Commerce Commission. I think we're all pretty clear on the record, every single participant in this call, that we supported these strong and crucial regional partnerships. Thank you again, Senator Marsh, for publicly stating time and time again the need for this interconnectedness that further acknowledges that Guam's prosperity can also translate to prosperity of our regional partners. As you know, this extends above and beyond our work with the Marianas Working Group, so I can appreciate the broader perspective that you bring to the table, Senator Marsh, and my participation in this. I do want to say that while I'm not a big proponent of establishing commissions by statute, in this case, because the political will is apparent and it's inherent in the testimony provided by members of the governor's cabinet, I can rally behind this and help push it forward. I think the intent is great, and with the political will behind it, like we've seen in the prior administration, we did a lot of things without legislation. But in this case, if both the people of the House of the People and the administration could come together on this intra-commerce commission, I think it's a great thing. And so I just want to thank my colleagues for the opportunity to advance the bill to be publicly heard. And thank you again to the prime sponsor for keeping me in mind and allowing me to participate. I have no questions for the panelists. I do want to say, Mr. Chairman, that I do have 4 questions for the prime author that we can scrub offline in terms of the GITA participation, further identification, and definition of regional. But I could take that to the prime sponsor and we can amend the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Senator Tello Taidagui.
Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I was late. I didn't have an opportunity to hear the testimony from the general manager of the port and the CEO, Ms. Mendiola. But so I apologize if I'm asking the same questions. My concern, I appreciate the intent of this legislation, and the efforts moving forward and what's behind it all. But my concern is, and Senator Rispicio actually mentioned it, because, the question is, what role, if any, can organizations or groups such as APIL and the Micronesian chief executives play, particularly as policies are crafted and presented to consideration for the regional government? And I think former Senator Rory, basically explained that we can't do that. I mean, this is its own organization. And right now, they're doing much innovative and collaboration with the islands, the APIL, as well as the Micronesian chiefs. But I think we need to be conscious of that particular section. I did read the fiscal note with regards to and GITA. I used to work there, so I know all the projects that you have there, and putting this on your plate right now gives you that another responsibility per se, and without funding, and that's very difficult. Especially something as big as this, as you move forward and getting people together. I mean, you're taking other members away from the current work that you're already doing. But having funding behind it, that's going to be very helpful. Is there any chance that GITA can find funding through some of the grants that you currently have in order to implement something, maybe not on such a grand scale as this bill, to just get it starting, Melanie, sorry, I didn't finish that sentence, but yeah, pretty much, you know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah. And I thank you, Senator, for recognizing that we do have a lot of projects and a lot of kind of these unfunded mandates and such. And so one of the pieces of feedback I gave to Senator Marsh upon her introducing this idea to us was that what we did when our governor established the small cruise ship, the cruise task force, we also did not have funding for this task force. Having said that, because of her commitment to growing this as this industry, or this kind of sub-industry of tourism, what we did was we looked what we started to do was we made sure it was in our comprehensive economic development strategies, or our SEDS plan. We did apply for some funding to do another update to the SEDS plan. And so we do believe that we can utilize some of the SEDS money for the research piece of this But for the implementation or the planning of any specific industry, that would require likely a second, another sort of grant application for something else. So for example, right now, we have an application with outstanding with the US Economic Development Administration for a small cruise ship RFP or RFI, and it's, or I'm sorry, for a consultant. So funding to hire a consultant to help the islands, so Guam, the Northern Marianas, and our neighboring islands, develop a plan and an RFI to invite small cruise ship lines to consider our region. And so the only issue that I can identify with that, of course, COVID notwithstanding, the issue with that is anytime you're applying for federal funding, then you're on a federal funding timeline from the perspective of submitting your application and waiting and waiting and waiting. So just to give you an idea, we submitted the application very early this year and we have not yet received feedback. Either way, I mean, rather we moved forward in the process. So we think that we'll get some more feedback, but we haven't as of yet. But we also think that some of the holdup on the federal side of the house also has to do with likely the pandemic delays. So we don't necessarily think that's a regular course of business for them. So we think we can identify funding through grants. Yes, that's something we actively do for anything like this. I think it's just a matter of the timing. If the group is meeting monthly, and then from month to month we're waiting, it just might be a matter of, I don't know, the group coming up with different goals that have to do with, one piece of it is funding, one piece of it is building stakeholder communication, one piece of it is building our network of resources even wider. And I think the other thing, I'm sorry to kind of go on with this, but the other thing is, I think if we identify our neighboring island partners, they also have access to various levels of funding outside of the federal source. So outside of the US federal government. So for example, the SPC, Pacific Communities, I know that they've sponsored some projects in FSM, and projects have had to do with economic development, and that's been grant funding that's come out of a sponsor out of Europe or China or parts of Asia. So there's different, I think there's different outlets. It's the timeline that'll get wacky. I think we don't have a steady stream.
Yeah, I think, thank you so much, Mel. And thank you for actually bringing up the cruise industry. I actually was part of that at the Guam Visitors Bureau. And actually there was funding on that. I know this was before your time, but we did find some funding and we worked with PADA. And they were able to come out to Guam and do the assessments and the research. So that was quite interesting. But that just goes to show you, we were able to do that through Guam Visitors Bureau. So maybe Rory might have some funding over there since this is about imports and exports. Rory might have some funding to help support this initiative moving forward. But I really, personally, I just don't want to see interference with free market, and it's important that we allow, it's difficult for private companies to do business in a region by regulating imports and exports. And it's important to, I don't think government should get involved too much or be able to dictate as much and allow for free enterprise. But appreciate that, Mel. And I know you're doing a great job over there trying to, juggle all these programs that are coming your way, and appreciate the work you're doing, especially for our community, our business community. Appreciate that. And thank you, Senator, former Senator Rory Rispicio. I hope I didn't put you on the spot by, providing some funding.
No, never. Thank you.
Good to see you. Okay, good to see you too, Matt. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Titagui. Senator Kelly Marsh-Titan, are there any other questions you had for the second round?
Not really any questions, but I just want to highlight that this is, at least as I envision it, is a think tank. And the think tank is to, have a dedicated group of people who have this particular different types of expertise and look at the potentials, look at the resources, and look at the obstacles. So to report this, so think tank, identifying, looking at, and then reporting it to us lawmakers so that we are easing the obstacles. We are encouraging through legislation, if that's the direction to go, an industry. So this is, this bill is to do those sorts of things. So it's definitely to improve, to uplift, to think, to identify, to get the information out there, to collaborate. But it's really to have it come back to us policymakers and the governor so that we have the tools to understand what we might do in policy through executive order or through changing or addressing some of the focus of the administration. So I just wanted to be able to clarify that. I don't have an additional question. I'll just wait until I give my closing statement.
Okay, Senator Tadegwe, anything you'd like to add? Mr. Cruz, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, I was actually there present when PARA came out for the regional meetings. I was actually the president of Belao Tourism Association at the time. And the people from Guam actually came out and did a presentation. I believe it was Ernie Galito was out there, and they had shared their view of it with the Palau government and the Palau industry. And at the time, there were actually a movement, an organized movement in Palau to develop their cruise industry, which actually is, and what they were proposing was much the same as what we were proposing is Guam being a hub. They were proposing and working on a plan with Palau being a hub in which it would be a service and a reservicing and resupply turning point of an existing cruise ship industry that actually does go out to Palau. And side industries were the exchange of gray water processing and having all the supplies shipped to Palau, and then they resupply. It's pretty much the same as what we have been seeking. But if we had this information and we shared it together, then we would know that maybe perhaps we could work with them as far as promoting the whole region as a cruise ship destination. But again, we come into these situations where we're all working on the same thing and we can mutually benefit from it. As far as this committee being set up, I don't believe it's going to have anything to do with regulations. I think it will promote identifying opportunities for private sector businesses to perhaps pursue business with the neighboring islands, developing both our diversification of our economics as well as the diversification and more development of the neighboring islands. That is the one thing that I like to focus on as far as putting together some sort of, and even if GITA has it on their own, that would be great. And I'm sure the GITA is looking at opportunities like this, but I just like the conversation and the fact that we have some sort of organized type of where people from different parts of the industries and education and business, private sector, government agencies can actually talk. And the most important thing that I want to emphasize is that we actually speak to the neighboring islands and actually find out what's going on out there. A lot of times we don't even know that locally we import, it's $1 million industry, beetle nut from Yap and Chook, and where our reef fish comes from. And it's just, we see within the private sector, businesses owned by Chuukese individuals, you know, so we do benefit from the imports, but whether we can develop that further to develop our economy and the economies of our neighbors, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Maloney, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to advocate one more time for the addition of a person representing the neighboring islands. As Mr. Cruz said, there are many businesses on Guam owned by FAS residents. These same businesses hire and export goods from the region. The consulate could be, the debate that was happening was, who would that be? The consulate could be the agency or organization that appoints a member on. I'm not sure how the legal part of that works, if that seemed to be the concern, but they can appoint from a Guam resident, a business owner, or a consulate staff. And the reason for that is that understanding the compact and the impact of the compact, not just on Guam, there is an impact in those islands, and it impacts the economies of those islands. So having a true understanding of what those components are is vital to creating new ideas for and solutions for the economic in the region. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. I have something I could add to the conversation, perhaps, that I'm not too sure about the legality. There may be an issue, as former Senator Rispicio pointed out, you know, having an appointed member from a foreign country, and the Consul General is actually a representative of a foreign country, and I'm not sure the legality, but I think there's a way we can do it. We can have a nonprofit organization be able to have a seat on the council, I believe. So we can look to like the FSM Association of Guam, the Palau Association of Guam. Those associations perhaps could have a seat on the council. Then they appoint whoever they think would be a good representative on behalf of their nonprofit entity or non-government organization. So I think that might be a way that we can look at accomplishing that. Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, if anyone else has, unless anyone else has anything else to add, I'd like to allow Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano the opportunity to close.
Siduous Maasi, Mr. Chair. And again, Siduous Maasi to my co-sponsors who, and those who have written testimony of support. Yes, we live in a region that has so much potential and so much to offer. The years that I've studied it has been such a journey of awakening in many ways, of appreciation for what we have and the potential to build on this. And over the last several weeks, I've been having these conversations online, these two-way conversations where we are, as has been testified by Mr. Cruz and others, we have these entrepreneurs out there that are making a difference. They're developing these businesses. We've had some of this happening for a while, but if we put some concerted effort towards building upon these successes to strengthen our food security, to get to the zero waste initiatives that we are now all having to face, and some of those other issues, I think we only stand to benefit by finding out what the potential is, finding out what the obstacles are, finding out what the possibilities could be, and then passing that on to the legislature, to the governor, so that some action can take place for the benefit of our private entrepreneurs or those that are interested in developing into those areas. So let me go ahead and just read a little bit of what I had for my closing statement. So again, that potential to build on this lengthy beneficial tradition that we've long had, actually for hundreds, if not longer amount of time, hundreds of years, if not longer, and the region's wide range of resources and needs as a means to strengthen regional resiliency and rebuild and revision our economy. We need that diversification. We need to be figuring out how to be strengthening ourselves and revisioning ourselves that's less dependent on the outside, or working together, as former Governor Gutierrez said, that is allowing us to buy together or make stances together or work together with our many possibilities of grant possibilities, cooperation possibilities, and other types of support. Such efforts would have the potential for additional benefits, such as lifting up the entire region's economies, strengthening our food security, enhancing zero waste efforts, and potentially improving aspects of our healthcare, amongst many, many other possibilities, including some exciting new industries that are being ventured into as we speak. And so the more support as a government that we can provide to making sure that we're tackling any barriers that might be in their way, and paving the way to making sure that these kind of collaborations can happen, is a very good potential for us. So with that, I just want to thank everybody who came here to participate, and thank you for the different conversations that we've had along the way in building up this bill and the potential for this commission. I think that there's some tackling we can do to the bill to strengthen it, such as the way that we've handled it before for other work is to have, we've done this with our federal partners. We cannot mandate that the Coast Guard or the Joint Region Marianas participate, but they can participate, and they have agreed to participate in certain government working groups. And so we can put into the bill that we invite and encourage them and tackle it that way. So I think we have some different possibilities as to ways to make sure that the commission would really be reaching out and doing what it can to include other members. So Sijuis Maasi, Mr. Chair, for hearing this bill and for allowing me to make my closing statement.
Thank you, Senator Kelly Marsh-Titano. That will conclude our hearing for today. The committee will continue to accept written statements on today's hearing within 10 business days from today, which may be mailed to my office at 238 Archbishop Flores Street, Suite 906 at the DNA Building in Hagåtña. You may also send your statements to us at sen.cridgell@teleguam.net. That's sen.cridgell@teleguam.net. Or you can send it by fax to 475-4768. Thank you all for your participation. This virtual public hearing is now adjourned. It is 11:40 a.m. Thank you.